Good evening, everybody. Well, I won't say welcome to Israel because I understand this is already like about half through your visit. But still, welcome to Tel Aviv, which is my city. I heard you were in Jerusalem for about 2 days. So for those of you who don't know me, I'll just briefly present myself, and then we can have an open conversation about whatever you want. I just will have to apologize because by 7:10, something like that, I will have to leave you guys. So this is about our time frame. So my name is Tamar Zandberg. I'm a Knesset member for about almost 4 years now. This is my second term. I was elected in 2013 for the first time, together with member of Knesset Michal Rosin and Isawi Fred that you met. We were all like the trio. We were elected last elections when Meretz grew from the 3 seats, almost not getting to a double of 6, which is still not enough, but still was a sign for the left, kind of the Meretz left getting a little bit stronger. Before that, I used to be city council member here in Tel Aviv. I live here for about more than 10 years now. And before that, I used to work in the Knesset as a staffer and assistant to former member of Knesset Ran Cohen, who is also a friend of some of the people here, and was a Knesset member from Meretz for about 25 years. So as you can see, I am very dedicated and very consistent with my Meretz affiliation all over my career or whatever. I don't see that as a career, but as a shlichut. But I'm very active on a number of issues. I was here an active sitting city council member when the social protest in 2011 started, and we actually had people living in tents here in the center of Tel Aviv, protesting against the housing prices and the cost of living in general. And actually it was also, it was not only about the prices, but kind of a crisis of faith or of trust between the political system as a whole and the Israeli public. And I think this is an issue we're still struggling, we're still debating on in the public conversation and the political conversation in Israel since. And of course, for us, Meretz being a left-wing party, and I think we are the only party, at least for sure, the only Jewish or Zionist in the Israeli political spectrum that take pride in that word, left. That is our self-definition, because it seems like many others, even those who are part of our political camp, try to escape from that self-determination because the right wing and especially extreme right has managed to portray that definition as a curse, as something bad, as something to take shame on rather than take pride in. And we are actually very proud of that, because for us it means a set of our values. Of course, first and foremost, the thing that the left is most known for is striving for peace and solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but also many other issues like social economic justice, which is something that the social protest was pretty much about. Civil equality. As you probably know, Israel is the only democracy in the world where state and religion are not separated from one another, and actually that makes the homeland for the Jewish people the only democracy in the world where a Jewish man or woman cannot get married or divorced by his or her own belief, but only by Orthodox law, which is something I can never get and will not and continue not to understand until we change that. So for us, justice, equality, and democracy are the 3 legs of that kind of summarize our values, and that everything that we do every day derives from that. Personally, I'm very involved in issues of sustainability, social and environmental justice, urban planning, social, public transportation, and among that, public transportation on Shabbat, on the weekends, which is a huge issue here because part of the result of state and religion not being separated is divorce and marriage, like I said, but also the fact that the public transportation is shut on the weekends, which makes it not only very hard to move around if you don't have a private car on the weekends, but makes it also very, very hard to invest and actually develop a very, very good and active public transportation system, because any Israeli or any Israeli family who can afford it is actually forced to buy a car, even if they live in the center of the metropolitan like I do. I live here in the center of Tel Aviv, in maybe one of the only places where a private car is actually not needed, but I have to own it if I want to travel on Shabbat. Otherwise, it's just not possible. And of course, we are active on, right now, something that is very, very occupying us a lot is a wide set of rules, regulations, government actions against NGOs, especially human rights. You probably heard of the anti-breaking the silence, Shomrim Shtika and B'Tselem, and we are probably, or for sure, the only ones in the political system who actually stand up for breaking the silence and B'Tselem as the human rights defenders.
What about the joint list?
Yeah, the joint list is the joint list is for sure in these views. But I must say, I don't want to talk against any other list. But of course, we share these views. But I think I won't be too not objective in saying that Meretz is the most vocal and the one who is the most outspoken, yeah, thank you, about these issues. Of course, we share these views with the joint list and also against racism, which is something like, for example, yesterday they demolished houses in Kalansawa, which isn't heard of that. So of course we share that. Maybe they were like more active on that than us, but so kind of a labor division, you know, between. But unfortunately, we don't have that kind of labor division with other partners in the camp, especially the Labor, the Zionist Union, and Yesh Atid, who is between trying to imitate, or I call it chase after the right, like Lapid and Yesh Atid is doing, or just keep silent about it and trying to avoid the entire issue like most labor members and of course the leaders like Herzog, Livni and others are doing. So Meretz is really very outspoken on these issues because first of all we think this is just and the moral and the ideological thing to do, but also I must say that I cannot understand the politics of trying to be some kind of a pale imitation of the right. I mean, we have them for that, you know. So I cannot understand, and you can actually see it in the polls. Today there was another poll when Meretz was between 6 and 7 seats and the Labor was 9. So, and that is, you know, the party that is supposed to lead this camp and maybe raise the next prime minister, hopefully, of the camp, etc. So so this is us, and really our hands are really full with all these issues right now, and you know, there is a sense of desperation a little bit in our camp, and maybe coming from progressive camp in the US, you can also share that regarding the international trends of different you know, politics in your country, in Europe, and other places. I am actually, of course, I see this reality. I'm aware of that, but in the same time, I'm very optimistic because I feel that we actually have no choice but winning this for the sake of our country, for the future, for the sustainability of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, we must being able to implement the two-state vision, the social justice and equality for all vision, and I'm pretty sure that that we will eventually be able to do that. And when I look at the right and I see how eager and how passionate they are in trying to keep us silent and ban us and keep us away from the public conversation. If we were such a small, insignificant minority, they wouldn't bother so much, right? They would say whatever. And we actually see, I'm sure that Israel is approaching a moment of needing to take a very serious and a meaningful decision. Which way are we stepping? Are we going in the path to secure the sustainability of Israel as Jewish and democratic, or are we losing that? And are we just continuing this kind of status quo, which is not really stable? It's not really a status quo. It has a very, very high price of violence, and even losing what the forefathers of the Zionist movement had in mind when they built this country. It is as serious as that. And I'm sure, I'm positive, I'm confident that Israelis will make the right decision. I'm just, what I would like to see more is the leadership that is actually presenting the choice as I just did, instead of making it such a vague message that you can't even distinguish between what the government has to offer, and that is the most extreme right-wing government in the history of Israel, and what is the alternative. I'm sure that once we pose the existing policy and the alternative and the differences between them in a very, very clear, loud, and self-confident manner, we will be able to win most Israelis' trust.
I know it's a difficult question, but we've been talking a lot about ideology and vision, and the right versus the left. And if you could right now tell us, in a few words, even though not to simplify it, but what, if I was voting, what am I choosing between? What am I choosing between?
First of all, the political will is not there with the government, because it is being held by a very strong settlers lobby that is, by the way, does not have a majority in the Israeli public, but has been managed to gain a lot of political power within the political system, within the parties, and right-wing parties that are very strong. And right now the government is relatively unified around this issue, the natural alliance between right-wing and ultra-Orthodox parties, and you see that very, very clearly. I take my optimism from knowing that this is not what the majority of Israelis want. It does not. Let's take last elections, for example, 2015, a year and a half ago. It wasn't 20 years ago, it wasn't 50 years ago, a year and a half ago. I kind of assume that an Israeli, a voter that voted for Likud, kind of knew that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not going for the two-state solution anytime soon, okay? That is 30 seats. That's a lot. That's 25% of the Knesset. Another 8 with the Jewish home, the same, So that brings us to less than 40 seats, which are 1/3 of the Knesset, and the rest of them, all those who voted for the opposition parties, plus a center party from the coalition, for the government party, and some ultra-Orthodox parties who care a lot about these issues but are quite indifferent when it comes to politics, and that has been proven in the past, are, are at least a potential allies for that idea. And I just know that the current situation when Israel is military in control over a land outside our borders, in it millions of people, of civilians that are not our citizens, is just not sustainable. This cannot go any longer. And I'm sure that most Israelis know that this is not an end reality. That we are still in some kind of an interim, some kind of a medium stage that is supposed to go somewhere. And this choice is approaching. And I'm sure, yes, it's true. When you go to vote, there is a lot on your mind. You choose, one of the election campaign videos that was very, very, that I liked a lot, and that was very, very to the point, was by the Likud. It was called The Babysitter. Remember that?
Yes.
It's about a family, 2 parents, 2 children, preparing to go out in the evening, coming back from their day jobs with like an average Israeli apartment, and suddenly the bell rings and the babysitter is in the door, coming to watch the kids when the parents go out. And they open the door and it's the Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu. And they're saying, "Mr. Prime Minister, what are you doing here?" And he said, "I came to babysit your kids." And they go, "What? You're gonna watch our kids?" And he goes, "Yes, of course. Who's gonna watch your kids? Bougie and Tzipi?" Ho, 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 and everybody's, And, I thought about it, and, it's a little bit funny, it's a little bit disturbing coming from our political point of view. It's kind of, manipulation, and but I think that most people, they want simple things from elections. They want someone they can trust. And that is the really, really, if you go to the basic idea of politics. What
I think they can trust him.
They probably, I think there was a growing discontent, and there was a growing discontent from his policy and the question whether they can trust him. But, it's always a question of alternatives. And yes, I think most Israelis felt they could trust him more than his opponents. So our job is to have a very strong, confident political camp with leadership that most Israelis can trust. And I'm confident we can do that. I'm sure. Now, when and how it's going to happen, I don't know. If I had the answer, I would have done it, already.
And that would be my question, is what do you see as the pathway forward? I mean, Israel is at the crossroads at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And things have transpired very quickly. I mean, if we look at the last time I was here 2 years ago, I asked about ISIS and about Jordan and what, what could be done, more proactively and constructively. And of course you have the situation between Israel and the Palestinians. And today, now, in this last week, Netanyahu says this was a terrorist attack inspired by ISIS, or that there could be, linkage. So what was once over in Iraq and Syria, and maybe some incidents in Jordan, now conceivably, according to Netanyahu, has occurred in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, I
there's
think
no time and space.
I do believe, and I think this is something many Israelis take into consideration and maybe even fear from. You know, we live in a tough neighborhood, like in the wider sense. This is the Middle East, and terror is something that is, you know, world terror, and ISIS specifically is something that is in really the hearts and minds of a lot of people here. Now the question is, what can we as Israel, as Israelis, as the government of Israel, do to best immune ourselves from that threat, which is a threat, you know, all over. It's a threat in Europe, it's a threat in the US, of course it's a threat in the Middle East. Exactly. So I believe, and you know, this new situation is also does also cut new fronts in the Middle East itself. So you see countries that are threatened by the Islamic terror and by ISIS, that are Islamic, that are Arab countries, no less and even more, you know, if you take the numbers, much more than the Western countries. And these countries are also threatened by Hamas, by the way, like Egypt, like Saudi Arabia. So the question is, do we as Israel continue to shut ourselves from the region, from the world, because of the Palestinian issue, and say, sorry?
Myopic with blinders.
Yeah, exactly. Or we try to take advantage of these new fronts. For example, take advantage of the Arab League initiative, which is still on the table and can help us use the Palestinian issue to recruit some of these countries that are threatened by the same threat as the West, as the US, as Europe, and as Israel, and as Egypt and Saudi Arabia and others, and create a new front. The only obstacle to that reality now is the Palestinian issue. These countries say we cannot cooperate with Israel because we are on the opposite sides on the conflict, on the Palestinian conflict issue. If we recruit them to an agreed and acceptable and sustainable solution to the Palestinian issue, we can be the best partners to fight Islamic terror and Islamic State, for example. But that is not happening because as Israel we have restraints that are again coming from domestic politics. Because
politics as usual.
Exactly. So I think that right now, when Prime Minister Netanyahu and our government is trying to convince us that the Islamic State terror and the Palestinian issue is the same, that's not true, and that's not helping us moving forward. No.
Now, a lot of people in the States, especially men, said that they wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton because being president is a man's job. You're not the only MK or leader who has spoken to us about the importance of the public trusting leadership. Do you think that the Israeli people would trust a woman on issues of national security, which seems to be foremost in everyone's mind?
I think that is a very, very, very good question, and I think that is a very important issue. I belong to those who think that the gender issue played a much, much bigger role in the U.S. elections than we understood in real time, and maybe even than we understand now. I think it will take a while longer to process everything that was there, and how deep the almost inability, the emotional inability to trust a woman for the number one position in the world. I think that notion and that instinct it's almost an instinct, because it's not something rational. It's not something that you can explain. It's something that you feel, which means a lot in politics.
That operates here, you think?
I think this is very universal. I think it's a very universal symptom. I think it operates anywhere. And I think this is something that we as social change, camp, as progressives who want to see change in the world, among other issues on that, we have to really, really take a thought into that and understanding how we kind of put some more effort on that, because that goes to tell us that the feminist revolution, which is the most successful revolution in the history of mankind, is not complete yet. It's far from being complete.
However, you had Golda Meir.
That's true.
Where is feminism right now in the state of Israel? And also, how does feminism have a place within a Jewish state?
Yeah, so we did have Golda Meir. We did have a woman prime minister, which is something the U.S. have never had, which is, something. And we also have, two other things that we always thought that keeps us, more to the equal side was the kibbutz. Everybody worked, equality for all. And of course the IDF, the military, where women serve. And that was a point of equality that does exist and is a point of advantage. But I think we've learned here in Israel that that's not enough. That doesn't bring us, far enough or to the best place that we could. I think that the status of feminism in Israel, I think, is, with different cultural variations that kind of you can find them in every society. Like I think the American society, from the little that I know, I've never lived there, but is more equal on some things, but is less on others, like any society. And I think the status of women, above all, is really, really universal. Some of the most universal things that you can find all over the world is the power relations and the inequality between men and women. And you can find it, like upstairs, close to the glass ceiling, like we call it, in the senior positions, of governmental positions, military positions, legal, academic, whatever. You can find it also, in the down the pyramid.
Have you experienced that?
I don't think there's a woman who didn't. I really don't.
You don't think women have become more outspoken? Like, personally, I feel like even from the time that I was a child, or what my mom tells me about, like, her military service and what's going on now, like sexual harassment, even if, like, the solution is definitely not perfect, like, at least we're talking about it, at least it's something that's being said.
Of course, there is there is.
There's a backlash.
As I said, So the feminist revolution, really, as I said before, is the most successful revolution in the history of mankind. No question about it. No social change movement has been so successful. So in less than 100 years, women have gone through being the property of men, deprived from the right to vote, from the right to go out of the home to study, to work, etc., to the situation now when it's much more subtle, the inequality. It's not manifested. It's not like nobody would tell you, yeah, she is worth less because she's a woman. But people would act like that.
Of course, I said
not,
that.
Yeah, so...
there's a backlash, but at least I feel like some of the women, I think my friends are becoming more brave with, like, saying their opinion.
No question about it. And I also want to say, and if I go back to Meretz, our party, that the changes that you're talking about, and I totally agree, they don't happen alone. You have to help, you have to bring them about. And for example, in our party, we have an internal regulation stating that we must have
Like a certain amount of women on the list.
Quota.
A
It's
quota,
like
yeah, quota.
it's like a quota, but not exactly a quota. It's like a minimum, like a threshold,
Yeah.
like a threshold of at least 40% women on every internal body, like on the party's convention, on the party's management, on the party's list to the Knesset. So that means both Michal Rosin and myself, when we were first elected, we used that threshold to push us up, and we actually we were jumped over 2 men that got more votes than we did in the primary elections, and we were elected to the Knesset, and they were not. That goes to show you how...
Just the first time.
That was the first time, and by the way, the second time, both of us, the second time we ran, we didn't need the threshold. That goes to show you that once women are given, you know, the equal opportunity, from there we manage by ourselves. But still, this is something we're very proud of, because this means that as a party, you know, we put our money, our votes where our mouth is, and we don't only declare the need for equality, we also ensure the mechanism to make it happen. So I think this the same for every other position in the working world. I think we have to make the rules and regulations work for us, because if we wait for the change to happen, it's not going to happen by itself.
And one last question on that point, in relationship to that being tied to secularism versus Judaism, in terms of the empowerment of women in a Jewish state versus a secular state.
I think it would be too easy to say that since we have ultra-Orthodox and more traditional politics or parties, that is the reason for the inequality of women. I think you can find you know, the things that are being challenged for women, like sexual harassment, like inequality in the senior positions in the secular world. You can find it. Maybe it looks differently, but it comes from the same, you know, in the end it's between men and women. It's not between religious or secular. I mean, of course, these are also worlds and these are also circles, but I think it would make the job way too easy to, you know, to hang that on just being traditional or conservative or whatever. It goes both ways, you know. You can find like the most modern and secular societies are also the ones who you know, make the you know, who objectify women and who makes sex merchandise. So I wouldn't put that in that drawer, you know. I think it's, as I said, it's very, very universal, the inequality of women.
Tammy, our first speaker was Moshe Raz on Tuesday, and he said that right now Meretz has roughly 4% of the vote, but that he is quite certain that there's 8% of Israelis who share the values of Meretz. So the question is, where is the other 4% going to come from? And since Meretz has been thought of as a party which has, I know how much you've done in terms of gender, but